All right, so hello out there, everybody, and welcome to this short, hopefully short but quick, concise recording. This is a Zoom recording on CBD and the endocannabinoid system. So I've decided to do this recording because I've been having talks for about the last, I guess it's been 3 or 4 months now on the endocannabinoid system, and it turns out that more and more people are requesting to hear the information. And I'm not surprised. Really, CBD is the topic of conversation for a lot of people. We're asking questions. People are experiencing tremendous benefits using CBD, and people want to know why. You know, what is going on with CBD? And I'm super excited to continue to spread what I've learned over the past really year, maybe year and a half now, doing some research of my own, trying to understand what is going on in our bodies when we do utilize the cannabis plant. So a lot of the information that I have here provided for you, I'm pulling from different resources. One of the major ones is Dr. Christopher Shade. He is a chemist. He is the chemist for a product that I highly stand behind 100%, and I'm going to tell you more about that later, and you'll begin to understand why it's a really great product and why people are experiencing really, really great results with all of this. But anyways, his name is Christopher Shade. You can look him up. And I've pulled a couple of other things from PubMed, a couple of articles from Project CBD, SC Labs, Leafly, just a couple of other places. But if you Google anything that you're looking for in particular, I'm sure you'll find a bunch of hits. I'm just trying to put it down together in a quick, concise way. I'll tell you briefly, I'm super excited. Just probably about 60 minutes ago, I got home from UC San Francisco, where we had a follow-up appointment for my mom who saw her neurosurgeon. And for those of you who know me, one of the reason that I'm actually even involved in the educational portion of CBD and cannabis is because a year and a half ago, my mom went into surgery. She had a full spinal surgery, and she's been somebody that's been lost in Western medicine for about 20 years, chronic pain on 10, 11 different medications. And she went in to have this surgery a little bit over a year ago. I guess it's a year and 4 months at this point. And he pretty much sat us down and said, look, you know, we don't know if we're going to be able to control her pain when she comes out of surgery. And that was a big fear. So I took it upon myself to start figuring out what CBD is, what cannabis is, how I could help her manage her pain, because in the back of my mind, I'd been hearing over and over again all of the benefits that people are getting with pain and with medical marijuana. And it wasn't anything that I understood on any level. I'm a chiropractor. I really understand holistic and natural healing methods. Just that is not something that's ever been up for me. So I never really paid attention to it until it became really personal. So long story short, I brought her home a week after the surgery. She was still in tremendous pain. They weren't able to control her pain in the hospital. It was pretty devastating, but I started administering different levels of THC and CBD. And at the end of 6 weeks, she was off 6 or 7 of her medications. It was a huge, huge deal. Really, she was walking up and down the stairs, laughing, you know, just like it was a huge, transformation that I witnessed, and I wanted to know, you know, what was it that was going on in her body, and how was she able to do that? So, and just full on pain control. She went from a 10 to a 0 within 1 week, and that was a huge testimonial to the power and the wisdom that's in this plant. So let's talk about it. You know, and I'll say one more thing. It's not just a personal story for me. The reason I'm doing this is because it was very personal and I witnessed this major transformation, but other people are having this. Other people are seeing this. A lot of people who are interested in knowing what's working and how it's working is because that they've either heard of somebody who's having really great benefits and they want those benefits for themselves, or possibly they're thinking about somebody that they love and care about who's experiencing some illness and they want to know if it works for them. So I would just say pay close attention. And if you have any questions, my name is Dr. Michelle Bean. I'm out of Santa Cruz, California. And whoever referred you, whoever sent you this video, hopefully knows how to get in touch with me in case you do have any questions. But whoever referred you here probably has a lot of the answers for you themselves. But if not, then please use me as a resource. So let's go through some of this information. Again, I'm trying to keep it as brief as I can. So I'm going to try and talk fast. Let's see if I know how to share my screen here. Play. So I'm hoping you guys can see that. So CBD, what is it? It's called cannabidiol is the name of it. We're going to talk about the endocannabinoid system. In order to talk about CBD, we need to talk about cannabinoids. So cannabinoids, it's just the name. It's the name of an active component of the cannabis plant. So when you extract oil from the cannabis plant, they've discovered now at this point 150 different types of cannabinoids. 2 of them are THC, which is, a lot of you know it as the psychoactive component of cannabis, and then there's CBD. So THC and CBD are 2 of the different cannabinoids. THC was the first one to be discovered. It was 1960s. I can't remember the exact date, but in the 1960s, THC was discovered in the Hebrew University of Israel. Professor's name is Raphael Mechoulam. If you want to know some really good information about the endocannabinoid system, I would say look him up, Google him. He has a lot of really good material. And he's one of definitely the father, the pioneer of cannabis in the endocannabinoid system. So anyways, he discovered the THC. He was the first one to isolate it. CBD came shortly after. And the reason that I put this this chart up here, because you can see over here at the bottom right is the CBD, like all of the different properties that are being researched and shown to have benefits. CBD is shown to have benefits in all these different areas. And along the outside there, you can see different types of cannabinoids. And really the point is to let you know cannabinoids work synergistically together. So CBD isn't operating all by itself. It is operating with other ones as well. But the reason we're studying CBD right now is because it is hitting so many different physiological parts of the body right now. You can just see it. And you can read that yourself. Seizures and convulsions, reduces inflammation, artery blockages, relieves pain, relieves anxiety, treats psoriasis, like so many different things that on different levels that it's working on the body. So the endocannabinoid system, it seems like a big word. Let me break it down. Endo means endogenous. Cannabinoids, they just decided to continue to use that same name from the extraction of the plants, the cannabinoids that we just talked about in the system. So the discovery of this endo or endogenous, our body makes these cannabinoids, the discovery of the system started happening in the 1980s. 1988 when the receptors, CB1 receptors found in our brain and in our central nervous system that directly bind these cannabinoids that we're talking about. That's a really big discovery. That's a huge discovery to understand that we have receptors, something in our brain that acts as a lock, and the key is a cannabinoid. So that cannabinoid comes in, it unlocks that key and opens up the gate for physiological functions in the body in a very major way. And CB2 receptors were found in the immune system cells, so the white blood cells that are running around through the blood system, also in the immune organs. So you can think of it as like the thymus, the tonsils, the spleen, bone marrow, and of course, again, all the immune cells that are traveling through the body and the peripheral. So that's a really big deal. Let me just, if we can put this into perspective for you to understand that we don't have receptors in our brain that bind vitamin C, and we don't have receptors in our brain that bind things like omega-3 and fish oils. We have receptors in our brain that directly bind this extraction from the cannabis plant. That's a really, really big discovery to understand that it has an immediate influence on the body. And it's no wonder that it's being studied extensively right now. And it's no wonder that it's really helping a lot of people in a lot of different ways. So understanding endocannabinoid system, and we can think of this in terms of like, we know that we have an immune system, right? And we have a cardiovascular system, we have a nervous system, we have an endocrine system, that's our hormone systems. We have an endocannabinoid system. So thinking of it in terms of like a functional piece of our physiological bodies. It has a very specific function. And what they're understanding more and more is that specific function of the endocannabinoid system is homeostasis. So homeostasis is balancing of the body. So balancing numerous different physiological processes in the body. So areas of the brain that are the brain or the body that are overactive, that are out of control, we can start to quiet those down. And then areas of the body that aren't functioning and are really sluggish, start to bring that up, and that's bringing balance to the body. And I think we all on some level really understand that we have that capacity in our human bodies to have a balance, that we have systems in place, but they're not always functioning. They're not always working. And what we're discovering more and more is that our endocannabinoid system isn't doing its job. It's not able to function the way that it used to or the way that it was intended to. But really huge discovery, understanding that this is the main balancing homeostasis of the body. Really big deal. So those CB1 receptors, CB2 receptors are also found in different parts of the body in different ratios, but predominantly brain and central nervous system, and predominantly the immune system cells. So we talk a lot about, I'll break that word down at the bottom, neuro, endo, immune modulators. So modulators simply means that it's conducting, that it's modulating systems, it's turning systems on, turning systems off. Again, overactivity, we want to quiet it down. Sluggish, we want to bring it up and turn systems on to bring balance back to the body. So neuro means the nervous system, so nerves. Endo meaning the hormonal system, and then immune meaning the immune system. So CBD and the endocannabinoid systems have a huge influence on the nervous system, our hormonal systems, and our immune system. So let's talk a little bit more about that. This one I grabbed again off of Christopher Shade. You can see down at the bottom, he got this from Partland et al. 2007. But really the understanding is that these receptors, the endocannabinoid system, it's been around for 600 million years. You know, looking back to every vertebrate investigated to date, are seeing that they have these receptors. So this is a system that has been put in place that we have evolved with to continue to have balance in the body, making major changes, major influences on a lot of different pathways in the body. CB receptors existed long before cannabis evolved. 25 million years ago. So just the fact that this plant is around, there isn't anything else to date that I'm aware of. I think they are looking for some studies. There's some studies, somebody's studying, I can't remember the name of the professor that I read this article, but they're looking at one other plant that might actually bind certain receptors, but not the cannabis receptors, not the CB1, CB2 receptors, excuse me. So really understanding that cannabis is the only plant right now, cannabis and hemp is the only plant right now where you can extract oils from it, and it's gonna have a direct influence on our body. Big deal, that's a really big deal. So the next question then is, if we have this endogenous cannabinoid system, we have receptors in place, it binds those cannabinoids, we must have something, an active component that we make in our own bodies. Otherwise, why would we have these receptors? You know, if the receptors have been around way before cannabis has, then we must be utilizing it in another way. And that is actually true. So the two that we talk most about are anandamide and 2-AG. This here is anandamide. This one was discovered in 1992. Again, the group out of Raphael Meshulam's practice group, the Hebrew University in Israel. Lots of information coming out of Israel, a lot of really, really great research, really good understanding on the endocannabinoid system and CBD and medical marijuana. They're actually utilizing this in the hospitals in Israel and really utilizing it in many hospitals across the world, everywhere except for the United States right now. And I'm hoping we can really catch up because there's a lot of good information out there. So anandamide is short, or it's Sanskrit for bliss, so considered the bliss molecule. It's also found in chocolate, so that makes complete sense that we get blissed out when we eat chocolate, able to raise the levels of anandamide in our blood when we consume chocolate. As long as, and I always say this to people, as long as you're enjoying that piece of chocolate and you're not beating yourself up for eating it. So enjoy it, raise your anandamide levels. It's also shown to be upregulated or turned on through meditation, and part of the runner's high, influencing the different neurotransmitters that are activated when you run. So anandamide, the bliss molecule, is a really strong agonist. When we put agonist on there for the CB1, CB2 receptors, just means it wants to, it binds it strongly. It has a strong affinity for those receptors. Specifically for the CB1 receptors, again, acts very much like THC mind. See, THC, what I didn't tell you earlier, has a very strong affinity for the CB1 receptors. when you add CBD to the system, it starts to kind of pluck off that THC so that you don't get that constant like psychoactive component, and it kind of regulates it and goes over to either cleans it up or takes it over to the CB2 receptors where it can continue its beneficial properties, whatever it's going to act on those CB2 receptors. But this anandamide also has a strong affinity for the CB1 receptors and CB2 receptors. The next one is called 2AG. This has been termed somewhat the motivational endocannabinoid. You can see there that it's found in animals' milk, including breast milk, so it's transferred from mother to child during breastfeeding. And again, one of the studies that I read was on blocking those 2AG receptors, trying to understand what they really do. So when you block the receptors for 2AG, what happens in the animals that they're studying, they lose that desire to suckle. It's the suckling mechanism. So it's not that they can't, it's that they choose not to. So kind of thinking it in terms of like losing the desire to thrive. And those are really important molecules. If we take a look or listen to that, the bliss molecule anandamide, having blissful experiences, and then the motivational molecule 2AG, like we have systems in place right now that are designed to help us thrive, to motivate, to live healthy, happy lives. And the question is like, why aren't we feeling that? Why aren't we utilizing these? We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment too. So high levels of 2AG have been found in the central nervous system, even much more than anandamide. They're discovering this more and more, they're really utilizing 2AG in a very big way. And we'll talk about more about this later on as we go through this, but also that idea of like 2AG acts very much like CBD does in the body. So all of those different systems that we saw in that chart earlier, they're starting to understand that 2AG is having a major influence, just like CBD does in the entire body. So how does it work? How does CBD actually work? So when it says CBD is a weak agonist, for the receptors, again, agonist means binding capacity. So it doesn't really have a strong affinity. It doesn't want to bind those receptors directly. We used to think that CBD binded those receptors. It turns out that CBD doesn't actually bind. All of the other different cannabinoids, they bind. THC has a strong affinity for those CB1 receptors and all of the other cannabinoids. But what CBD does, instead of actually binding those receptors, the understanding is that it's modulating. It is a main neuromodulator in the entire system. And you can think of it as a conductor. So CBD gets into the system and it starts conducting these major pathways in the body. It's orchestrating all of these physiological processes, changing the way our endocannabinoid system's working, really changing and turning on and off gene expression. I'm going to talk about that, and really stabilizing inflammatory processes in the body. And it's doing that on many, many different levels. So really understanding that CBD is in there running the show, and understanding, again, I just said 2AG acts very much like CBD. So CBD comes in and it enhances our body's ability to do the work that it's designed to do. So let's talk about how that actually happens. I want to talk about three main things: the endocannabinoid tone. I want to talk about gene transcription modulation. That's a big word, but I'm going to explain to you what that means. And then stabilization of neuroinflammation. So let's talk about that. So and this one I also got from Christopher Shade, good information. The idea here for endocannabinoid tone. So tone, when people talk about tone, it just really means like how strong is the system working? What's the tone? Is the volume all the way up? Is the volume all the way down? Or is it kind of at a balanced level? And the understanding right now, and let me show you this one right here, endocannabinoid deficiency, clinical endocannabinoid deficiency. So Dr. Ethan Russo, he's a guy that you can look up, and he's doing a review. He has a couple of papers out, but he's really trying to review and study and analyze the endocannabinoid system. And his analysis is that this deficiency in endocannabinoid tone, it's what's creating a lot of the pain pathways in the body. So he's looking at migraines, fibromyalgia, irritable bowel, and really trying to understand like when our endocannabinoid balance is off, when it's not functioning, then it lowers the pain threshold in the body, and we start to experiencing these things that we haven't had in Western society for a very long time. So how does CBD enhance or turn up the balance of anandamide and 2-AG in the body? One, it blocks anandamide from being released from the body. So when we stimulate anandamide, and we've already discovered 3 different ways we can do it, through meditation, through running, and through eating chocolate. There's definitely other ways you can do it, but you know of 3 now. But let's say we're stimulating production of anandamide in the body. Up there on the right, you can see a purple circle with something that says FAAH on it. So that enzyme is something that goes in and it breaks down anandamide. So what CBD does is it gets into the system and it blocks that FAAH. So instead of breaking down anandamide, we start to build this pool of anandamide in our system, so that we start to bring up the tone. And try to work on that deficiency. And the way that it works with 2-AG is it just turns on, it stimulates the pathways to turn on 2-AG. So with CBD in the system, we start enhancing and turning on our levels of the 2-AG and the anandamide in our own system. And this is especially important for people who don't have those high levels of 2-AG and anandamide in the system. Again, understanding that we have systems in place right now that can do all of this work and turn on all of these different systems in the body, but they're not functioning because we don't have enough of them. We're not producing them, or we're breaking them down really quickly. So increasing endocannabinoid tone, really big deal. To really get a deeper understanding, if you're interested, you can look up Dr. Ethan Russo. He has some really good information on that. So let me talk to you about gene transcription modulation. So big word, genes. Everyone knows that we have genes, right? So in our DNA, we have DNA inside of all of our cells. And inside of the DNA, when you unwind the DNA, we have genes there. And genes are just different sequences. They're sequences that a few years ago, you heard a lot about the Human Genome Project. And pretty much what they're trying to do is map out all of the different genes, all of the different sequences, and trying to figure out like what they regulate, like what the point is. So understanding that gene transcription, genes need to be read. They're kind of like a blueprint. So they don't actually do anything. You can get a lot of this kind of information from somebody like Bruce Lipton, and you can understand that he says it's not in the genes, it's in our environment, because genes by themselves don't do anything. They need to be read. So that's what transcription means. Gene transcription and modulation. So what they're saying is that CBD is modulating or deciding which genes are going to be read and which aren't. So let's talk about that for a quick second. A lot of really great work coming out of Spain. Dr. Christina, I can't remember her last name. I'll have to look that up. But she has a really great article on how it changes tumors and cancers. So in the sense of genes. So we know that in our immune system, we have an immune system, and when the DNA unwinds and it opens up and exposes those genes, we have systems in place from the immune system that comes in and it scans the DNA in the genes for mutations, right? But what happens and this is especially true in Western society, is that we're so stressed out that we're high sympathetic driven. Sympathetic just means fight or flight, a lot of stress, the go, go, go lifestyle, always worried about something, not sleeping enough, and just really high sympathetic driven lifestyles. And when we're in high sympathetic tone, our immune system doesn't work. So what happens is when these genes mutate, we don't have those systems in place anymore that's going to come in and scan that genome. So when we have a mutation like cancer, the mutation is proliferation. So it's a mutation in the genome that says grow, 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 and continue to grow, and grow so fast. Not only that, but copy this gene in the next cell that we're going to grow. And that's what proliferation is. It's just out of control cellular growth and shuts down the entire cell. So the cell actually isn't functioning anymore. All it does is grow and grow and grow. So that's a mutation in the gene. When you throw CBD into the mix, and I'm going to simplify this, there's a lot of different ways that it does that, but when you throw CBD into the mix, the CBD goes in there and it overrides that signaling pattern that's reading that, constantly reading that mutated gene, and it's saying, instead of reading that mutation, I'm going to go up to this other gene sequence that reads or transcribes for cellular death. It's called cellular apoptosis. So what happens, it's a natural cellular death. And that's what typically happens in cells once they're either not functioning or they've outlived their, what they're, when they're ready to die and get cleaned up and regenerate new cells. It's that gene that's red. So what happens is that cell is shut down, and so all the other ones around that do that too. And that's how CBD is changing tumors and cancers. A lot of research done around gene transcription, around anti-cancer, anti-tumoral stuff. You can look that up. That's a very simple explanation of how it's doing that. But to understand literally that CBD is coming into the system and overriding bad signaling patterns in the body and moving more towards a balance in the body. So this article right here shows how CBD is turning on genes that combat oxidative stress in the body. So really turning on the major detoxification pathways in the liver. That's a really, really big deal, especially here in Western society when we have so much toxicity. We can think about the toxicity in the environment, in the air, in our food that we're eating, the soil we're growing our foods, all the EMFs in the air, like so much toxicity nowadays. All of the plastics, everything's made out of plastic nowadays. So really important that we have a strong functioning liver and detox system so that we can detox the body. But what's happening now is that we're so taxed out, we're working so hard to detox the body that those pathways are being shut down. So throwing CBD into the mix turns on those pathways in the body that help detoxify the body. So glutathione system strongly upregulated. It's also turning down the inflammatory processes in the body and turning on the anti-inflammatory processes. So really changing the gene sequence and which genes are going to be read in the body. That's a really, really big deal. So changing the expression of our genes, turning things on and turning things off. That's what CBD is in there to do. This one we left in here because I like to look at this one, especially right now that I just got back from, I was telling you at the beginning, from the hospital with my mom's follow-up, and bone growth. This is really helping, fractured bones, healing the bone. And of course, I have her on all kinds of CBD tinctures because I know it's going to help her bone growth. The last thing I want to talk about here is the idea of inflammation in the brain. So neuro is brain and inflammation in the brain. So changing got the sun coming in here. Close that a little bit. Get a big glare going. So yeah, the last thing we want to talk about then is brain inflammation. Has anybody out there seen the movie Concussion? With Will Smith? If you haven't, I highly recommend it. They're talking about the NFL players. So NFL players, after they've retired, or sometimes even that this puts them into retirement, is just constant brain damage, concussions. And what happens when somebody has a lot of concussions, or it could just be one that's out of control, is there's this idea of brain inflammation. And it's just a cycle that happens. It's a stimulation of certain receptors in the brain. They're called glutamate receptors. And the idea of these glutamate receptors is that they are excitatory. They're very excitatory, but when they're out of control, they can excite cells to death. And that's what they actually do. And then when those cells die, what happens is it releases mechanisms that go out and trigger other mechanisms to continue to excite these receptors. So you can see there, it's on the right there, there's called microglia. You don't need to know that, but it releases chemicals that injure the cell. On the left over there, there's the cell. And when that cell is injured and it's excited to death, then it also releases other factors at the bottom. You can see neurotoxic factors that then go on and stimulate these glutamate receptors. So there's this cyclic thing that's happening that's causing this major major inflammation and dying of brain cells. And it's just chronic, and it just keeps going. So concussion, this is a lot of what they're talking about, but we need to understand it's not just concussions. There's a lot of different triggers that can excite these glutamate receptors that I'm talking about. Here's a couple of them. Brain on fire, that's pretty intense. And it's real. If you have ever experienced inflammation of the brain, this isn't an exaggeration. You can't see it that way. Because it doesn't actually look like that, but it feels like that. But you can have low levels of inflammation that are chronic and consistent and really hard to break down. But understanding some of the things that trigger this, immune activators, so the immune system, so autoimmune diseases, out of control immune system, Lyme diseases, different viruses, beta amyloid. So we're looking at the plaquing sometimes in the brain that can set off this inflammational patterns. Mercury, there's a lot of mercury in our bodies right now. Glyphosate, that's Roundup. So Monsanto, if you've ever eaten any kind of Monsanto food, you are a candidate for chronic inflammation of the brain. Lyme diseases, mold toxins, if you've ever been exposed to mold. Mold is another thing that can set that cycle off and really hard to control. All the EMF radiation, the stress in our air, the patterning so that we can, communicate with our loved ones, family and friends that are not in the same city, but we pay a price for that. And then dysbiotic toxins, we can think about those in terms of endotoxins. Again, endo is something that our body produces. So through chronic inflammations, if you've ever had a chronic inflammation, the bacteria breaks down and is released through the body, and little parts of this bacteria can also trigger parts of the brain, this inflammation in the brain. So that's a really big deal. Like, brain inflammation is a really big deal. And we can think of brain inflammation in so many different disorders. We're looking at autism, all the autism, ADD, that they're really looking at how you shut down that inflammation in the brain. That's the major detoxification, shutting down inflammation, turning on the detox centers to really start to quiet down this brain on fire feeling. But what we understand that CBD does is CBD is one of those things that can get in there and shut those systems off. But what's fascinating is the studies are understanding that CBD, sure, it stabilizes those microglia that I was talking about. Those are from the immune system, their immune system cells that are in the brain, but it can start to stabilize those. It stabilizes the NMDA receptors, the fight or flight. So those are those glutamate receptors that I was talking about that have excitatory effects. But if they're excited too much, then they excite themselves to death, and it kills the brain cell. If you've ever read a book by Russell Blaylock, I believe it was a 1997 copyright, Excitotoxins, The Taste That Kills. He explains it really, really beautiful in his book, the whole MSG pathways. And nowadays, sure, we've heard a lot about MSG, but nowadays MSG can be found in almost any processed food. So you have to be very careful. So not only just the MSG that you can find in boxed foods if you're going down the aisles and you're just picking stuff up, it has probably at this point over 500 different names, MSG, but also thinking of the glyphosate that's pretty much in all of our food if you're not being very careful about not eating organic. But we know that CBD can get in there and stabilize those receptors. Again, it's going to downregulate or turn off those inflammatory genes that are causing systemic inflammation. It's going to turn on the anti-inflammatory genes. That's the NRF2 pathways. And again, it's just showing here that it's a combination of changing the receptors and turning on pathways in our genes that really help bring the body back into balance. Really big deal that's happening here. And one of the things that I read, and I think it was Christopher Shade that was saying this at the Prime My Body launch out in Houston, was showing us that even though we're talking about it in terms of CBD, when they go through and they really study it, they find that it's the 2AG that's doing a lot of this work. So even though CBD isn't directly binding, what they're finding is that it's upregulating or turning on, enhancing that 2AG, our endogenous cannabinoid system that we have, so that it's our body that starts to do the work in the way that it was designed to do the work. CBD is modulating, turning on, orchestrating these main physiological processes in our body that allow us to function the way we were designed to function, and start to really eliminate a lot of that toxicity, a lot of the dormant pathways, the sluggishness, the anxiety, the inflammation, detoxing the body. Really, really brilliant work. So that's pretty much CBD, the endocannabinoid system. 3 main points, again, is turning on, balancing the endocannabinoid system. So increasing endocannabinoid tone, really important. 2, understanding that it's changing the expression of our genes and the gene pathways, trying to bring the body back into balance in major ways by changing the expression of our genes, turning up regulatory anti-inflammatories, turning down the inflammatory processes, and really starting to quiet the brain. So I'll briefly go over a couple of the different areas that are being studied. Again, I don't want to get too far into this part of it, because I think that if there's something very specific that you're looking for, you can find it. You can Google it, you can PubMed search it, or ask somebody that you trust. So a lot of work around the gastrointestinal system and digestion, a lot of work around eating disorders, reduces nausea. There's a lot of studies around Crohn's, obesity, diabetes, leaky gut, irritable bowel. It just goes on and on. The liver pathways, again, we talked about that. Really turning on the way that they can study the livers by damaging the liver using alcohol binges, and really trying to damage the liver and induce a state of liver that looks like very diseased livers, or maybe livers like people in the United States with all of the toxicity, and seeing what happens. And what they're showing is, again, it's turning on these major pathways, like 500 plus pathways in the liver, to really turn on the detoxification systems. It's preventing the accumulation of fats and lipids around the organ systems. That's another really big deal. Pain management, again, this is why I am so passionate and got involved in the first place, is because of the way I saw it really influence my mom and her life. Right in the middle there, affects the perception of pain. That's a big deal. That's a really, really big deal. Changing the way our brain is perceiving pain, but not just that. Again, if you're listening to this, it's changing so many different pathways at the same time. That systemic inflammation that drives pain, churning that down, changing the perception in our brain so that we can quiet down the brain, churning on all the detoxification systems in the body, really mitigating the inflammatory process. Big deal the way that it does that. The top neurosurgeon, I don't know if I mentioned this in the beginning, but one of the things that he said to my mother today, and the reason we went to him was because he is the top neurosurgeon in the United States, at least one of 2. There might be one other one that on the East Coast, and he was very humble about that, but I think he might be the top one. And what he said today was there's 3 main things that he recommended to my mother, and one of them is to decrease the opioids that she was taking, 2, to move her body more, and 3, he said, take more CBD oil. So this is becoming more mainstream. People are talking about it, and some major players are getting on board with this because we can really begin to understand how it's changing pain pathways in the body. So a lot of work around mental health, alcoholism, opiate withdrawal. That's why it works so well with my mom. Depression, phobia, schizophrenia, PTSD, anxiety. If you have not seen the documentary Weed, W-E-E-D, I highly recommend that. Dr. Sanjay Gupta has a 3-part series. Look it up. You can YouTube it. A lot of work around brain health and neurogenesis, so regenerating new brain cells, brain plasticity, changing the pathways in the brain. A lot of work around Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. If you haven't seen any of the YouTube videos of people who are using cannabis for Parkinson's, for the tremors, it's all over the place, but they're using cannabis and medical marijuana in many other countries around the world, specifically targeting Parkinson's, migraine, seizures. It's a huge neuroprotective. We talked about how it protects the brain, and a huge antioxidant. We talked about how it upregulates the liver pathways. This here I got out of Leafly, and really just, it's a bright colored graph. I just wanted to throw that in there because of all of that talk we're talking about. But just beginning to understand, you can see right in the middle there, gastrointestinal disorders, mood and behavior, neurological, pain and sleep, and so many different other things. They're looking at cancers and HIV, fatigue, asthma. How many people do you know that have fatigue, and how many times have you experienced it? So in the center, in the middle there, you can see how they're studying the different cannabinoids in conjunction with CBD. So again, trying to understand that although CBD has major influences and effects on the body, begin to understand that it's not operating alone, and it's nice to have other cannabinoids in the mix because it needs something to conduct. You know, it's going to conduct our own pathways too, but you can see that working synergistically with other cannabinoids is really important. My laptop is about to shut off. My battery's dying, so I'm going to grab my charger real quick. Hang tight. Okay, see if I can edit that piece out, but I didn't want the computer to shut down. All right, so you had a chance to look at that while I was grabbing my cord. This here is a chart that's coming out of SC Labs, one of the main marijuana labs who they can test different tinctures and oils and cannabis to see that what's in it is actually in there. And you can see at the top there, there's a bunch of different cannabinoids that they've been looking at. And you see the one in blue, it says CBD and all of the different things that it's treating or influencing, I should say. They know that it has a really strong influence, and right in the middle there, reduces inflammation, big deal, reduces risk of artery blockages, treats psoriasis. They're a really good resource. SC Labs, I believe it's .org, or if you just look up SC Labs, I'm sure you can find it. They have about 7, maybe 8 short videos on the terpenes and cannabis and CBD and some of the other cannabinoids. You can look them up. They're a great resource. So I want to briefly tell you about, I think it's really important, you heard me talk about it, it's really important to know what you're getting. If you're somebody who's interested in using CBD, after you've heard this or before you even learned about why it and how it's working in the body, it's no surprise to me that this particular product fell into my lap about 4 months ago, again, because I've been doing this research, I've been looking into it. I had a very personal experience with my mom, and I'm the kind of person that since then I've been wanting to, you know, find the tallest buildings and get the loudest microphone, you know, and just yell as loud as I can. It's like, wake up, you know, wake up everybody, we've got to pay attention. Why isn't people talking about this? So I've been sending people, encouraging them to get their medical marijuana cards, to go to the dispensaries, you know, if that's the route that they want to take. This particular product, you do not have to have a medical marijuana card for. It has very, very low THC. It says right there that it has less than 0.02. The last time that it was tested, it's actually 0.002%. So very low, minimal, like pretty much no THC. So you're not going to get that psychoactive component. You're not going to get the high, but you can definitely have the benefits of CBD without the high. So I really like this product a lot. One, because it's 100% non-GMO. In this country, again, they're starting to genetically modify the plant to have high levels of CBD in it. And it turns out that you do not have to do that. There are natural plants, natural sources of hemp, this one particularly grown outside of the United States in Europe on organic farming. Again, super important that you get product, if you're going to use it, that is organically farmed. We were just talking about glyphosate a moment ago, about Roundup, which is non-organic sourcing, and how it can trigger inflammation in your brain. So really important that you were not doing this. You don't have to genetically modify or throw pesticides all over a plant that's grown in nature if it's grown in a very beautiful way. The nano liposomal technology, this is what sets this product apart in a very, very big way. So we're looking at 6 to 10-fold higher absorption with this. So most oils, when you get them into your system, because you have to digest them if they're large in size, you have to digest them, so they're not going to cross into the blood that easily. Even if they're sublingual, if it's something that you're going to take in your mouth, like the tinctures and the sprays and the droppers, you get them into your mouth, they're not going to go directly into your bloodstream. You're going to have to go through the digestive system and through the liver, and then it gets shot out into the blood, and then your body can actually start to use it. What this does is it bypasses all of those systems, because Nano, it's just a size, it's a unit. What they do is they make it super small. They make it really, really small so that it doesn't have to go through the digestive system and actually can get right into the bloodstream. Liposomal is just the delivery system. They're small liposomes. They are stabilized. You see three from the bottom. It's called phosphatidylcholine. You don't have to know that, but if you were to look up phosphatidylcholine alone, it has tremendous benefits for your cells. It's a phospholipid, and it's the same thing that the outside of your cells are made of. So when it does get into your cells, it helps, it kind of binds with that cellular structure, or if it's inside of your cells, the different organelle systems in there, and it helps increase the benefit there, and then it just drops the oil right into the cell so that it can go and do what it's designed to do. This is a dietary supplement. It's legal in all 50 states. It's a high quality CBD oil. When I first learned about it, I learned about the nano emulsification, or the liposomal technology, to understand that you can go from a 6 to 10% absorption rate to anywhere from 97 to 100% absorption. That's a big deal. And the reason that's a big deal is because we're paying a high premium for CBD in this country right now, because of the benefits, because people want to get their hands on it. But to really understand, are you getting a product that has been grown in nature, that's grown under the sun, that doesn't use pesticides, fungicides, herbicides, to try to keep the plant growing, to make sure that it's not genetically modified? And are you absorbing it? I can say that when my mom was using this, when I was trying to help her treat all of her inflammation and control her pain, she was spending anywhere from about $500 to $700 a week, because she had to take high levels of it and make sure that she can get into her system. And not only that, but because of all the medications that she'd been on for so many years, her digestive system was very sluggish. Her absorbability was very, very low. So we had to give her a lot of this. So I think it's just really important to understand that delivery system, that you can really get it into your body in a very quick way. They're saying anywhere from 90 seconds, to 2 to 3 minutes, and it's on those receptors. It is, and those receptors are so happy to have that oil in there, to have that product, that active component in there. So again, I'm really excited about this. I stand behind this particular product 100%. The chemist, again, his name is Christopher Shade. If you want any more information on the chemistry of nano liposomal technology, it's also called nano emulsification, I would suggest you looking up somebody like Christopher Shade. He made this product specifically for Prime My Body. It is high quality. You get 16 milligrams per recommended dose of CBD. And all of that, again, 97 to 100% getting right into the system, high absorption rate. So what else can I say? I'll just say a couple more things, and then I'm going to close this down. On the right there, that's what it looks like. Just a really pretty picture, so you can read that if you're interested in that. That's the liposome in the middle there, and those are just the way that they stabilize it so that it can get into your cells, so that it can really do its wisdom, have its wisdom in your body. Another really pretty picture about phosphatidylcholine therapy for membrane health. That's something you can look up on your own as well, but really good information on there. Here's the chart that they use. This is the absorption chart that's been studied. You can see in the green there, that's 5 milligrams of this nano emulsification, this Prime My Body. The product is called Prime My Body. So they used 5 milligrams versus 10 milligrams, so 2 times as much of the leading brand, another leading brand, and you can see that absorption is completely different. Again, 5 to 10-fold. Really good stuff there. So I'll close it off by saying that this is a very educational resource. I'm not here, I'm here to share information, give you some of the information that I've picked up along the way. And I'm hoping that those of you who are listening to this and watching this, whether you're thinking about yourself or you're thinking about somebody that you truly care about and how this might help them. I am not here. This is not intended to treat, diagnose, cure, or prevent any disease. It is strictly for your information. And if there's something specifically that you're looking for, I encourage you to research. I am sure there's something out there that you're looking for as far as does it work for something. Try it. So I refer you back to the person who sent this video to you. If I sent this video to you and you have questions, please reach out to me. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. If you want to know how you can get your hands on some of this high quality CBD oil, these are 4 different ways. We retail it for $149. I have a website that you can order it from, or if you're local here in Santa Cruz or Reno, because I'm going to be spending a lot of time in Reno, you can get it directly from me. If you want the wholesale pricing, you pay a $39 fee. It's an annual fee. You pay it once a year, and then you get wholesale, which is $119, and you can get it as often as you want. There's a tremendous business opportunity right now in CBD. CBD is the next booming industry. It's huge. And you would know that if you're listening to this, because it is the topic of conversation. People are asking questions and people are getting major, they're experiencing benefits from CBD. So I would, if you have any interest in understanding or learning about the business, the next booming industry, again, you can reach out to me or the person who sent you this video. So those are, that's what I have to say. And I thank you for listening to this. I don't know how long I went on, but let's close that off. So thank you for joining me, and thank you for listening. And I wish you health and wealth. Health and wealth.